Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the BSN podcast. Today is Friday, July 8th. Hope everybody had a good rest of their day yesterday and is having a good day so far here today. It is, in fact, Friday, July 8th. Today, end of the week, we got the Friday. Tomorrow will be Saturday, and it will be the weekend, and it will be a exciting weekend with all the baseball that we got on and all the baseball that's coming our way with the Yankees and Red Sox and Mets and Marlins. Keith Hernandez, retirement tomorrow at Citi Field, so that should be a big day for all those Mets fans going out to Citi Field tomorrow. Last night was a very successful night for the New York Yankees. Not dominant victory. I was going to say the New York Mets, and I was going to say dominant victory. But for the Yankees, it was a very good win. It was close. It was not easy. Red Sox made it interesting, but the Yankees got out to that early lead. Josh Donaldson with the grand slam, Hicks with a solo shot. They got out to that early lead, took that early, 5-0 lead. The Red Sox bounced back with the Devers 2-run home run and the Devers 3-run home run. Rafael Devers just continues to hit off a Cole, and guys do that sometimes. I mean, that happens. There's guys that dominate certain pitchers, and there's some pitchers that will dominate certain hitters. No matter which way you draw it up, Rafael Devers has dominated Cole throughout his career so far, and he did it again last night. But the Yankees' offense was able to provide enough, and the Yankees get the win 6-5. Clay Holmes comes on for the win, or for the save, I should say, and the Yankees get the win. Mets dominated from start to finish. J.D. Davis grand slam, so for Met fans, you want to obviously see that. That's a good sign for a guy that has not had a year that many expected him to have. So he gets a grand slam. And the Mets just put it to the Marlins, 10-0. It was 10-0. So it was a football score? It was 6-0, and then Davis with the grand slam made it 10-0. So the Mets scored a touchdown and added on an extra point last night. So it was a good night last night for the New York baseball. In total, Yankees and Mets outscored their opponents 16-5. So good night last night for the Yankees and Mets. They'll both be back in action tonight. Yankees' second game of a 4-game set against the Red Sox. And the Mets as well. Second game of a 4-game set, obviously, against the Marlins at Citi Field in Queens. All right, so a lot to get to today on the program as we wrap up another exciting week in the world of sports. We got 2 hockey topics today. I mentioned yesterday that I was going to talk about Georgiev, and I wanted to find another topic, whether it was going to be a hockey topic or whatever it was going to be. We got 2 hockey topics today, so we're going to start things off today with the Rangers. They traded Alexander Georgiev to the Colorado Avalanche, and they get a couple draft picks in return, and the Rangers have finally gotten rid of their backup goaltender, where I think we all kind of saw this coming. It was only a matter of time. I'm going to give you my thoughts on this deal, where I think the Rangers go in terms of backup goalie now, because I think it's actually a pretty easy fix. I think they got a guy in their system already that I think is more than capable of being a quality backup for the New York Rangers. And also why, for the Colorado Avalanche, and I talked about Baker Mayfield yesterday and the trade there. I didn't think there really is a winner in that trade yesterday. As for this trade, I think it's a win-win trade for both sides. Avalanche now have a really good, solid tandem of 2 young goaltenders, and the Rangers get rid of a goaltender who they really didn't need. And I mean, for the Rangers, they got a couple picks in return. I actually thought the Rangers got more in return than I expected. So I'll give you all that stuff on that deal coming up. We're also going to get to the Devils. Yes, some Devils. Don't talk too much about the Devils on this podcast. I'm not a Devil fan. They're not really, I know they're New Jersey, whatever you want to say. I don't talk too much about the Devils on this program. A lot of Islanders, a lot of Rangers are the 2 teams I talk about. But we're going to get to Devils because they also traded for a goaltender. So I figured I'm already talking about one goalie. Might as well talk about another goalie. And for the Devils, it's a good move because they're coming off of a year in which they had like 50,000 goaltenders play for them. And it was not a good year. Lowest save percentage in the National Hockey League. And they were like 4th. They were like 4th or 27th in the league in goals allowed per game. So they get a goalie, and they get a goaltender in Vitek Vanecek, who is a solid goaltender, young. He's not Vasilevsky or Igor Shesterkin, but he's young. He's getting better. He's improving. He's a solid goaltender. From what the Devils were working with last year, definitely an upgrade. So we'll get to that. And we'll also get to the New York Sports Update to finish things off. Yankees, like I said, tonight against the Red Sox. Mets as well against the Marlins. And to all those Met fans out there going to tomorrow's game, Keith Hernandez, jersey retirement night, or his retirement day. Enjoy it. Have a fun time. Get to the stadium early because that place is probably going to be packed just like when they revealed the Seaver statue. So I just want to get that out of the way because I don't want to forget to say that later on in the podcast. I know how big that is, right? Jeter, when he got his number retired in Monument Park, I know how big that is. So for all those fans out there going tomorrow, expect a very big crowd. It's going to be a good day for Met fans. So enjoy that for those of you who are going out to tomorrow's game. Expect the big crowd like Tom Seaver's statue revealing day, obviously with their home opener. So all that being said, a lot to get to on the program. A big hockey day to talk about today. Obviously, we're right in the middle of the NHL draft, so you get a lot of trades going on. So, yes, it's July. Yes, it's baseball season, but we got some hockey to get to as well. So, with all that being said, this is the BSN podcast, and let's get into it. So, the New York Rangers have officially traded Alexander Georgiev, or other, as we all know him, kind of Georgie, to the Colorado Avalanche, and the Rangers get in return a 2022 draft picks, two 2022 draft picks, and one 2023 draft pick. Rangers get the 97th overall pick and the 161st overall pick, and for the 2023 draft pick, Rangers will get a third-round pick. Overall is not yet decided in that, but they will get a third-round pick in next year's draft. And obviously, the Avalanche get Alexander Georgiev, and this is no surprise. I don't think any Ranger fan here is surprised. I'm not surprised. I think we all saw this coming. He requested a trade a week ago. He's been a backup. Rangers don't really need him. He's a young goalie that can go thrive somewhere else. It's a win-win trade, and I said this to start the program in my introduction. It's a win-win trade because the Rangers don't need another goaltender. They have Igor Shesterkin. Now, backup is, you need a backup, obviously. Igor's not going to play all 82 games and play every single second. There's going to be nights where Igor's going to take off. There also might be nights where Igor's having an off night. You might need to bring another goaltender in. But Igor Shesterkin, fresh off a Vezina trophy, he's going to be our goaltender for the next 15, 20 years. And for the Rangers, this is a smart trade for them because they didn't need Alexander Georgiev. He's a young goaltender. He's only 26 years old. He's going into his fourth season, or actually, I apologize. He's going into his sixth season in the National Hockey League. And he's a solid goaltender. He's a very hot, cold, boom, bust type goaltender. He's not very consistent. He has games where he's really good. He has games where he's really bad. And then he has games where it's kind of an in-between. He's kind of all over the place. But that's going to happen when you're a backup goaltender. When you're not getting, and this isn't any sport, when you're not getting that consistent playing time, when you're not getting those consistent opportunities, especially behind a guy like Igor Shesterkin, who's going to be out there for the majority of the hockey games. He's going to be out there. He has so far, knock on wood, he has not been injured at all, really. He's been out there. He's been healthy. He's been consistent. He's out there on a night-in, night-out basis. Georgiev just didn't have a fit on a roster spot on this team. And it was hurting him all these years of him sitting behind, Lundqvist, then sitting behind, Igor, and now still sitting behind Igor. Like, at the age of where he's at right now, going into his sixth season in the National Hockey League at 26 years old, it was a good opportunity for Georgiev now to get a chance on another team. And now you look at the Avalanche, and they're in a position where they have two really solid young goaltenders, and Francois and now Alexander Georgiev, add that to the mix. And this also signals the end to the Darcy Kuemper era in Colorado. And, he's just fresh off the Stanley Cup win. I don't think many people are surprised by this. I really don't. I think a lot of people saw this coming. It was just a matter of who was going to replace Darcy Kuemper. But he's gone. And this is now the second year in a row, and obviously it's worked. I'm not trying to sit here and say it's not working. But now this is the second year in a row where the goaltender for the Avalanche, the starter, is gone. Philip Grubauer went, brought in Darcy Kuemper. It has worked out. Now Darcy Kemper's going. They bring in Georgiev. They'll see what happens. We'll all see. kind of how that plays out. But the Avalanche now have two solid goaltenders. And you know how I feel about Georgiev. I've said it early on in the podcast, and I said it over the course of this season. He's inconsistent. He has some moments where he's really good, like that one shutout he had this year. Was that against the Hurricanes, I think? He had that one shutout. He also had, I think he had two shutouts this year. I think the one was against Carolina, and I think the one was against Philly as well. And he had the two shutouts this season, and he was really, really, really good. He dominant, had a couple really good performances. And there's also a couple performances where he lets in some soft goals, and that's one thing with him. He lets in a lot of soft goals. He'll make some flashy saves, but sometimes it's the basic shots that he can't stop. And I don't want to sit up here acting like I'm a star goaltender saying, oh, he can't stop the basic shots. Believe me, I couldn't stop a 95 mile an hour puck even if I knew where it was going to go. Even if I knew, even if they told me right where it's going to go, I probably wouldn't be able to stop it. But I could barely skate. But in terms of him, there's some soft goals that he let up this year. And those are all signs of inconsistent playing time. Those are signs of, it's different from taking shots in practice to getting shots at you in a game. More intensity, more energy, quicker game, quicker shots. Your mind's gonna be going a little bit more in a game. So I think that's where, if you're a Colorado fan, you got, I don't think many Avalanche fans really care about this right now. Right this second, I don't think they care about it. I think a lot of them are still celebrating the fact that they won the Stanley Cup, and rightfully so. You celebrate the championship until the first game in October. That's how I see it. But if you're a Colorado fan that's really wondering how this deal goes, for me, a Ranger fan who I've seen him play over the years, he's a guy that can make some big saves. He can step up in big situations. He can have a couple big games. He shut out the Carolina Hurricanes. That's a big, big deal. But he also has moments where he lets in the soft goals, has bad nights, has those stretches where 5 minutes allows 3 goals, right? He sometimes has those stretches where 1 goal sometimes can, kind of tumble into 4 or 5 goals. And now instead of a 1-0 game, you're looking at a 5-0 game in the second period, and you're like, all right, this night's over. But I think if he gets more playing time, gets more a consistent playing time in Colorado with the Avalanche, there's a good chance that he kind of turns into that guy where he's more consistent. Not only does he make those flashy saves, but he's able to make he's able to make the saves that he should make. The big takeaway with Georgiev, to put it in simple terms, he makes the flashy saves, and the saves he should make, he doesn't make. And that's a sign of inconsistent playing time. That's a sign of rustiness. And that's why it's a win-win. Rangers didn't really need him, and he needed to go somewhere else. Avalanche aren't going to re-sign Darcy Kemper. They need another goaltender. They bring him in, and the Rangers get some draft picks for it. And I actually think the Rangers get a lot in return for a guy who has been all right, but he hasn't been great throughout his career. The Rangers got 3 draft picks, and they got a 3rd-round pick, that got used today. I think it's a solid return for a goaltender that I think will do well in Colorado. But I also think the Rangers got a good return for a guy who hasn't really started at all. He's kind of been, his playing career has kind of been like this, up, down, up, down. But he's only 26 years old, so he's got a lot left in the tank. He's a starter now. And for the Avalanche, you have 2 young goaltenders, Francouz and Alexander Georgiev. And however the Avalanche, whatever they do, whether it's a training camp battle, whether it's a preseason battle where they're gonna fight for the starting job, or whether it's an 82-game slate, right? 41-41. Whether they play the hot hand, if one guy's going through a hot stretch, they put him. If Georgiev's going through a 10-game stretch where he's like 9-1 and all that stuff, they'll put him in. And if Francouz going through a hot stretch where he's like 9-1 in his last 10 games and making all these saves, then they'll put him in. It would be interesting. Either they're gonna ride the hot hand, they're gonna name a starter and have the other one be a backup, or they're going to have them kind of split, 41-41 games, something like that. Maybe a little unbalanced. And, obviously injuries and all that stuff play a role. Hopefully injuries and that stuff doesn't happen. But you have to all put that stuff in contention. I personally think, Francouz I know is 32 years old, but he's only going to his 4th season. For Georgiev, who's 26 and going to his 6th season, I think both these guys bring a lot to the table in terms of what they can do when they split time. But you do have that question with Georgiev. If he splits time, is he going to be good enough? Because right now, when he's not out there consistently, he's all over the place. So if he splits time, is he going to still be all over the place? That's the question and I'm sure the Avalanche, their front office, their coaches will make that decision when they need to. Because right now, I'm sure they're all still celebrating the Stanley Cup. So just to give you a couple stats on Georgiev, like I said, he's 26 years old. This season, he played 33 games. He started 28 of those 33, so came in relief 5 times. His record this year was 15-10-2, so it was above 500. 2.92 goals allowed per game, 898 save percentage, and 2 shutouts this year. Like I said, those 2 shutouts came against Carolina and then against Philly. So 2 shutouts this season for Alexander Georgiev. In his career, he averages about 2.94 goals allowed per game. He had a solid season 2020-2021 when he made 19 appearances, 18 starts. His goals allowed per game was down to 2.71. But he's a guy that's going to hover around 2, hover around 3. He's going to be solid. He's not going to be great. He's not going to be awful. He's going to be solid, but he's going to be inconsistent. But like I've said, the inconsistency should probably even itself out once he gets more run out there. And in his career, he's had 8 shutouts. And it's funny, because his first year of his career where he played 10 games, only 9 starts, no shutouts. But ever since that, 2018-2019, 2 shutouts. 2019-2020, 2 shutouts. 2020-21, 2 shutouts. And 2021-2022, 2 shutouts. So the way it goes is if he continues to do this, he's on the path of about 2 shutouts a year. And in his career, he's played 129 games, has started 117, and he's got his career record is 58, 48, and 11. So his career record is just 1 game below 500 if you combine OT losses. It's over the NHL 500 mark, but if you combine the overtime losses and combine the overall losses, it's 58 and 59, but he's over 10 games above the NHL 500 mark at 58, 48, and 11. So Rangers move on from Georgiev. Avalanche get their replacement for Darcy Kemper. Add that to a combo with Francois, and we'll see what they do with that tandem in Colorado. And now for the Rangers, you have Georgiev, or you have Igor. So that's the big thing. For the Rangers, you're not really losing much here. You're only losing a backup that's better off somewhere else and getting a possible starting job. For the Rangers, you still have Igor. So where they go with backup is up in the air. Do they go with Adam Huska, who came up this year, played 1 game, struggled? Do they go with him, or do they go with Keith Kincaid? Personally, in my opinion, I don't think the Rangers need to go out and sign somebody. I really don't. They have Igor. Geez, I'm calling Igor Georgiev. They have Igor, who just fresh off of Vezina. He played 53 games. So you got to find a guy that could probably come in and play 25 to 30 games and play at a solid rate. I think personally, in my opinion, I think the Rangers, if they just go with Keith Kincaid, I think that's perfectly fine. A guy that's already in the system, knows this team, knows these players. It's not a new guy. He knows, what it's like being a New York Ranger. He's been around the team, been around the coaches and all that. You're not really bringing in a brand new guy. A guy that grew up in Farmingville, New York. He's a local guy, 33 years old. He's up there in age, but he's a veteran. I would do it. Personally, I think I would do it if the Rangers. Now, do they maybe bring in another goalie or two to kind of compete for that backup job? It's possible. You have Igor, and behind Igor is, I would say, in my opinion, I think it's perfectly fine if you just go with Keith Kincaid. Because when Keith Kincaid's been out there, he's been solid. The 2020-2021 season, when he was out there in a couple of the games, he played 9 games. His goal allowed per game was 2.59. So he was pretty solid. And in last season, he played in 1 game, and it was 2. Even 2, he only allowed 2 goals. So he's solid. In my opinion, he's solid. He's a solid goaltender for the New York Rangers to have a backup. He's done what he's needed to do. He's played only 10 games with the Rangers. 8 of those have been starts. But in those 10 games and 8 starts, he has done enough to keep us in games. He's won us a couple games. His career record so far for the Rangers is 4-2-1, so he's above 500. For a guy to go out there and play 25, 30 games, I'm going to guess if you want to be anti-Keith Kincaid as the backup, you could say, okay, well, he's only played 10 games with us. What if he plays, how is he going to do fair playing 30? But But I don't think he's an issue. I mean, he's been around too. He's been around since, he's been around for a long time. He played 6 years with the Devils, played a season with the Canadiens, and has been 2 years with he's been 9 years. Going into his 10th season, he's 33 years old. So he's a veteran. He actually turned 33 on July 4th. So I think this is a perfectly fine deal. I think for the Rangers, you have Igor. I think Keith Kinkaid, he's already been with the team. He's in the system. You know him. I think Keith Kinkaid's a perfectly fine form of, a backup. And if it doesn't work out, you can always trade for a guy mid-year. Trading for a backup goaltender is not impossible to do. I think it's very well possible, and I'd be fine with it. Igor, Keith Kinkaid as the goalie tandem next season for the New York Rangers. I think that's probably the smartest and easiest move for the Rangers. But if they obviously maybe feel there's another guy out there that maybe provides a little bit more, they could do that too. But let's be real here. Igor Shesterkin's your starting goaltender. You don't need to go out. He's the best goalie in all of the National Hockey League. You don't need to go out and make a big time or sign somebody else for to come in and be, they be this really, really, really good guy. You have Igor Shesterkin. All you need is just a solid backup that can go out there and do it just enough. And Keith Kinkaid's contract's not anything major. So I think it's smart to just go roll with Kinkaid. So the Rangers make a trade, and we'll see what they do with the backup. I would make the guess they just roll with Keith Kinkaid. I think that's also the better option just because I've said my reasons why. So we'll see what Drury and the rest of the Rangers organization decides to do with this now. So, by the way, the schedule got released. So the Rangers will open up the season with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So that should be good. I'm looking forward. Don't want to rush the summer away, obviously, but that's a game that definitely when it gets closer to happening, that's going to be a game a lot of Ranger fans will look forward to start the year. So it's going to be a good game. It's going to be exciting. So anyway, so that will do it for the Rangers and their trade that they made with the Avalanche. It's always funny when you see these teams that just won the Stanley Cup make trades, because it's like all right, they are doing work. They're not partying. It's almost like the Rams. Like the Rams won the Super Bowl, NHL drafts 2 months later, and it's like they don't even have any draft picks because they gave them all away. It's just funny. And then you see, it's like you wonder if they even are at the draft. It's funny sometimes when you see these teams and it's got to. And I don't know how Kemper feels. I mean, Kemper was good for the Avalanche. He did what he needed to do. Like I said, he's not lights. He's not a lights out goaltender. He's a solid goaltender. He was top 4 in the league in wins. I think he was top 5 in save percent. What was the save percentage? Or wins? There was 2 categories. He was top 5 in. So he had a pretty good year. I actually think Kemper had a pretty underrated season, to be honest. I thought he was actually pretty solid, especially in the postseason. There was a couple moments where he probably could have been better, but Kemper's not a flashy goaltender. He's not a guy that's going to make saves like Igor and Vasilevsky. He's not one of those guys. He's going to make the saves he needs to make. He's not going to be perfect, but he's going to do just enough to get the team to win, and he did that. I mean, he's a Stanley Cup winning goaltender. So he'll definitely have a market. There's definitely going to be a lot of teams that, looking for Kemper. He's also still relatively younger. There's definitely going to be a market for him, for teams to go out and in fact that too. I think having Stanley Cup champion on your resume is pretty good too when you enter free agency. All right, so anyway, so that's what I got for the Rangers and their trade of Georgiev. So I think it's a win-win for both sides. Georgiev gets an opportunity to start, and the Rangers get some solid draft picks in return, and we'll see what the Rangers do with the backup goalie position moving forward here. All right, so now let's get into another hockey topic. We're going to get into Devils. I don't talk too much Devils on this podcast, although I hear about them so much. I hear about them a ton because they're New Jersey team. They are a rival of the Rangers. We play them. They're in our division. They're in the Metro. Devils coming off a tough year where they played. They went 27-46-9, had 63 points. Finished second to last in the Metropolitan. Finished 7th to be exact. 8 teams obviously in the Metro. They finished 7th. Flyers, the only team worse than them, and they were only 2 points. The Flyers were only 2 points worse than the Devils. So I think we can all agree the Flyers were one of the laughingstocks of the league last year. Even though they only were 2 points behind the Devils, I think the Devils definitely were the better hockey team. But the Devils went out today and made a trade as well for goaltenders. So we got a lot of goalies moving around here. You had Marc-Andre Fleury signing an extension with the Wild. Then you had the Devils now extending Vitek Vanecek, or trading for Vitek Vanecek. And the Rangers also trading Georgiev. So a lot of goaltending news throughout the draft here and over the past couple days. But the Devils have made a trade. So the Devils have traded a 2022 37th overall pick and a 2022 70th overall pick to the Capitals, and the Devils get from the Capitals Vitek Vanecek and a 2022 46th overall pick. So the Devils ship 2 picks to the Capitals, and the Devils get Vitek Vanecek and a pick from the Capitals. So a little Devils and Washington Capitals making a move here. And the Devils get a goaltender. And the Devils get a goaltender and get a position that they need desperately. Because the New Jersey Devils last year, now they're going through a rebuild, and sure there was moments last season where they lost games because they were just not the best. They were just the outmanned opponent. But the Devils got some talent on their roster. Nico Hischier played 70 games last season, was solid, second in the team in points at 60. Jesper Bratt had an excellent year last year, led the team in goals, led the team in assists, led the team in points. We all know what Jack Hughes brings to the table. He had a good year. Severson had a good season. Pavel Zacha did what he needed to do, although his plus-minus was kind of all over the place, but he's still out there. He's another guy. Sarangovic showed some potential, too, at 24 years old. He's a guy that's going into his 3rd season. He showed some progress last year. The Devils have a real, and I'll say this, and I don't like the Devils, and I don't give them too many compliments, but the Devils have a really young, rich, talented roster, and they built it on that last night in the draft as well, but they build a roster that is young, like I said, rich, talented, and has so much potential, similar to what the Rangers did with Keandre Miller, Laff, Kakko. Mika's been with them for a while now. He's not, a young asset anymore, but he was a guy that they got towards the younger part of his career, developed, and now he's really in a good position. Even Adam Fox is another guy. The Rangers have so much young talent. And now look at them. They're all kind of hitting their peak, hitting their prime, and now look what the Rangers are doing. Just got to the Eastern Conference Finals, as we all know. So the Devils are very close to exploding. Like, the Devils are very close. And I think last year, if you were a New Jersey Devils fan, when you looked at the standings and you saw a 27-46-9 record where you finished 7th in the Metro and had 63 points, I think a lot of people would have assumed and said, this is a lot worse than it should be. And it's almost like this is a lot worse than it really looks, because the Devils last year, not necessarily were a bad team, even, with Dougie Hamilton and Ryan Graves and all those guys that bring some of that element to defense, that physicality. Like, they weren't that bad in terms of goal scoring, in terms of passing, in terms of the all-around play. Their defense maybe could have been a little bit better, but it wasn't terrible. The Devils' biggest issue was their goaltending. I mean, their goaltending last year was awful. I was about to say historically bad. I don't know if it was historically bad, but their goaltending last year was awful. As a whole, all of the goaltenders that played last year, and I will name them all here in a second, they averaged 3.68 goals allowed per game. That is not good. That's not good at all. That is a bad, bad number. That's almost up to 4 goals per game. You're then telling your offense, your young offense, that's going to have growing pains to begin with. There's going to be nights where Jack Hughes plays great, and there's going to be nights where Jack Hughes is not good because he's a young player. It's going to happen. It's all a part of making that jump from college, the minors and all that stuff. Obviously, Hughes, college and all that, going into, the NHL. It's all a part of that growing process. But Hughes had a solid year last year, and I think Hughes very well this season, being this is his, what is it for Hughes? What is this, his 4th year? He's going into his 4th season, right? That's crazy. Because Kakko, he's going into his 4th year too, because it was obviously Hughes drafted and then Kakko. So is Hughes going into his 4th year? Yeah, 4th season. It's only 21 years old. That's what's so crazy. He's 21 years old and he's going into his 4th year. But anyway, back to the Devils. there's nights where their offense is really good, and there's going to be nights where your offense is off. That's also just going to happen. You could have the most veteranized team in the world. You're going to have nights where your offense isn't good. I mean, scoring is hard. I mean, going up against Igor Shesterkin, you're not going to score 6 goals on him easily. It's just going to be tough to score 1. That's how good Igor can be, as we all know. But for the Devils last season, their biggest issue with their goaltending. So last season, the goaltenders that played for the Devils, Nico Daws played 25 games. Miles Blackwood played 25 games. John Gillies played 19 games. Jonathan Bednar rather. Bernier, however you pronounce his name, 10 games. Andrew Hammond, he played 7 games. Akira, I think, is it pronounced? I think the first name's Akira Schmid, played 6 games. And Scott Wedgwood, who is actually on the Dallas, I believe he's on the Dallas Stars now, played 3 games. So in total, those goaltenders played, obviously, all 82 games. Dawes played 25, Blackwood 25, Gillies played 19, Bernier played 10, Hammond played 7, Schmid played 6, and Scott Wedgwood rounded out their list, who is now on the was with Arizona. They got him, and now he's on the Dallas Stars. He played 3 games. So as a whole, they allowed 3.68 goals per game. Their best goaltender last year off of goals per game was Jared Bernier when he had 10. But save percentage, it was Jared Bernier as well. Blackwood was solid Blackwood was inconsistent at times. He went 9, 10, and 4. None of these goaltenders had winning records. Jared Bernier was the only one that was actually at the 500 mark. They never won with Schmidt out there. They never won with Wedgwood. They were under 500 with Dawes, Blackwood, and Gillies. So they were bad. I mean, there was really no success no matter what goaltender they threw out there. And you look at and I always find this interesting because anytime in sports, when you want to see how bad a team is at a certain thing, you got to look at the numbers across the league. So the Devils last year, in goaltending, in terms of goal allowed per game, they ranked 29th in the National Hockey League. Only better than the Canadiens, Red Wings, and Coyotes, who all were, as we all know, not good last year. Devils ranked 29th in goals allowed per game, and they allowed, like I said, 3.68. So really, really, really poor for the Devils in that category. And another category that they ranked actually last in was save percentage. They had a save percentage of 8.86. 8.86 save percentage as a team. That is really bad. Yeah, it's so bad it's 32nd in the National Hockey League. Guess what? 32 teams in the National Hockey League. They were awful. Terrible last season. That was 32nd in the league. And they only had 2 shutouts last year. To put that in perspective, Rangers had 8. Devils had 2. There was a couple teams that had 1. I will give you that. Vancouver, who actually didn't have a bad year goaltending, Vancouver actually had a solid year goaltending last year. They only had 1 shutout. So shutouts don't mean everything. Because, as a team, you could let up 1 goal a night. Never have a shutout and be one of the best goaltending teams in the league. But you get the point. Devils were not good last year with goaltending. So when I look at this trade for Vitek Vanecek, yeah, it's not a big name. Yeah, he's okay, similar to Georgiev. He's solid, not great, but he's solid. He's a good goaltender. He's not Igor, he's not Vasilevsky. He's not Marc-Andre Fleury in his prime. He's not Martin. He's not going to be Martin. He's not going to be Martin Brodeur for the Devils. He's not going to be Henrik Lundqvist. He's going to be Vitek Vanecek, and that is a solid goaltender that has some playoff experience, been on a winning team, brings that to the Devils now, and I think it's really a good opportunity for the Devils to take their goaltending from what it was last year, and that was in the bottom of the league in many of the statistical categories, and really turn it around. And I think this was the last piece, in my opinion. Sure, they need some other things here and there, but I think this was one of the last piece to the puzzle for the Devils. And sure, injuries and bad performances stuff played a role last year for that, so maybe you could hope guys are out there more consistently at the goaltending position. But when I look at this deal, yeah, you're getting Vitek Vanecek, who is solid. By the way, he's played 3 postseason games, so got a little bit of experience in the postseason. He's 26 years old. He was only his second year. He got better this year. And I think for a guy who got better in his second year, I think that's really promising, because you have to expect he got better in his second year, played more games in his second year, got more experience in his second season. Well, you should expect him to take that really big third-year jump next year, and that's going to be with the Devils. And last season, he had more shutouts than the entire Devils had. He had 4 shutouts. Devils as a team had 2. So I like the deal for the Devils. I think it's a really solid deal. They also get a draft pick in return. They gave up 2 draft picks, but they had a top 5 pick to begin with. I think it's a deal for the New Jersey Devils that is really, really promising. And a deal for a guy that's 26 and only going into his 3rd season. There's a lot of potential with this deal. It's also a low risk because you're not giving up a ton. You're giving up 2 draft picks. And unless of those draft picks turn out to be great players, you're not giving up a ton. And also, you get a draft pick in return. So you have an opportunity to continue to build your roster with the draft pick that you got. So it's a good deal for the Devils. They're getting a guy that's a solid goaltender, young, in his prime, actually just entering his prime, coming off of a very good year in his second season, ready to make that 3rd-year jump, and you address your biggest flaw, and that is goaltending for the New Jersey Devils. So last season, Vitek Vanecek went 20-12-6. 103 goals allowed, 2.67 goals allowed per game. His save percentage was .908, so pretty crazy. His save percentage is in his first year, .908. Save percentage last year, .908. So in his career, he's got .908 save percentage. He's got 6 shutouts. His career record is 41, 22, and 10. So when he's out there, Capitals win. And he's got a career save percentage of 2.68. Let me just show you some of his stats last season and where they rank. So last year he was 20-12-6. That was tied for 25th in the National Hockey League. 2.67 goals allowed. That was tied for 16th in the National Hockey League. .908 save percentage. That was tied for 28th. And 4 shutouts. That was tied for 6th. So those 4 shutouts were top 10 in the National Hockey League. And he was top 20 in goals allowed per game. So solid all-around stats. When you look at the 4 main categories, win-loss record, goals allowed per game, save percentage, and shutouts, 4 big stat categories, really solid numbers for Vitek Vanecek. And you assume when he's out there, as long as he stays healthy, he can only get better just because he's in his 3rd year. He's just entering his prime. He's still 26 years old. He's still so young. You know, he's in a good spot. So a very good deal for the Devils. A low-risk, high-reward deal. Because your high reward is you find your goaltender for a really long time and you get a guy that's going to be your goaltender for many years to come. Your low risk is if it doesn't work out, you didn't throw the bank at the Capitals to get him. And you also get another draft pick. So if you execute on that draft pick and that draft pick turns into a solid player for you, look, you're in a good spot. Or if you trade that draft pick down, whatever you do. Whatever you decide to do with that pick, it gives you also some flexibility. So a good trade for the Devils. So Rangers and Devils both making goaltender trades. Rangers giving up a goaltender, Devils acquiring one. I think they're both 2 good trades for the Rangers and the Devils. All right, so now let's get to the New York sports update and finish things off here on the BSN Network program for the week. Obviously, just a great weekend of baseball coming up. Mets, Marlins, and why that's such a big matchup, too, is, you're getting Keith Hernandez's number retired, which is long overdue. He was a great player. I never obviously witnessed him. I don't know a ton about him, but I've heard of him. I know what he was capable. I know what he was able to do. Obviously, being a big part of those, all-time great Met teams, and it was a big-time piece. So definitely well-deserved there. And as I mentioned before, all those Met fans going out to the game tomorrow, enjoy the ceremony and obviously enjoy the game as well. It should be a big day at Citi Field. All right, so as for the baseball, what's going on in the world of baseball, we got the Rays, Reds tonight, Angels, Orioles, Nationals, Braves, Rangers, Twins, Royals, Guardians, Brewers, Pirates, White Sox, Tigers, Cardinals, Phillies, Astros, A's, Giants, Padres, Rockies, Diamondbacks, Blue Jays, Mariners, and Dodgers, Cubs. Mets, Marlins tonight. Mets come into tonight's game 52-31. Marlins come into tonight's game 39-42. Good pitching matchup. Marlins got Pablo Lopez on the mound. He's 5-4 with a 2.97 ERA. And the Mets are throwing Chris Bassett out on the mound. He's first game back since he was battling with an illness, and he's 6-5 with a 4.02 ERA. Over/under set at 7. 7:10 Eastern on SNY is the game. Yankees-Red Sox tonight. Yankees come into tonight's game 60-30. They were the first team in the MLB to hit 60 wins last night. Red Sox come into the game 45-31. Yankees got Nasty Nestor on the mound. He's 7-3 with a 2.44 ERA, and the Red Sox FC Bolt on the mound. He's 0-1 with an 8.31 ERA. Over/under set at 10. This game also comes on 7:10 Eastern. It is on Prime Video. By the way, tomorrow's game for the Yankees is on Fox, and in Sunday's games, this Sunday night game on ESPN. So 2 nationally televised games, Saturday and Sunday for the Yankees, with a big series in Fenway, obviously. All right, so as for fantasy baseball, I'm currently winning in my main league 236-132, and in my other league, I'm currently winning 222-127, so going good in both leagues. I got some injury updates in my main league. A lot of injuries, a lot of updates to give you here. Gurriel is day-to-day. Gurriel is out of the starting lineup for Thursday's series finale due to an undisclosed injury. So he was out of the lineup yesterday. Judge as well as day-to-day. He was out yesterday with some lower body, what do they call it? Lower body soreness is officially what they called it. Boone said there's no reason and we'll be worried about it. He'll be back in the lineup tonight, so kind of just what it is. I mean, it could have been... He could have squatted 3 days ago or whatever. He could have did leg day 3 days ago and he's just sore from it. I mean, it could be the littlest thing ever. He could just be a little sore or whatever. Nothing to worry about there. And Carlos Correa's day-to-day. So he was held out of the lineup for Wednesday's loss, and he had tightness in his legs. So we'll see what happens there. My starting pitching today is Chris Bassett and Tariq Skubal. And in my other league, I've got an injury update, but Adam Wainwright, he's starting today. An injury update on Bobby Witt, who is still day-to-day. He's scheduled to field grounders and take swings as Royals look to gauge his availability moving forward. So he's got the hand injury. Big loss for my fantasy team because he's been a solid player. And also pretty big loss there for the Royals as well. Although the Royals are really bad, so you really wonder... Even no matter who they throw out there, you wonder kind of where they're at. By the way, Andrew Vaughn, did I read about that? No, I don't think I did. He was out of the lineup on Thursday due to, was it an illness on Thursday? Yeah, so if it's an illness and it's nothing like COVID, he'll probably be back more recently. And like I said, Judge was the lower body soreness, so he'll be back tonight. So anyway, that's what I got for fantasy baseball. A lot going on there. With fantasy baseball, having a good year in fantasy. Having a good year, looking for my 11th win, so should be good. So, anyway, that will do it for the podcast here today. That will do it for another good week of sports, another full week of podcasts. And, as you all know, on Sundays, I do my Bubs Talking Baseball podcast on Apple Podcast. So, if you're interested, check that out. That is on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. So that will be on Sunday. And as for the regular All Sports Pod, you know the drill. I take breaks on the weekend, so I will see you back here on Monday with the All Sports Podcast, with the BSN Network Podcast here on YouTube. So Sunday will be my Bubs Talking Baseball podcast on Apple Podcast and iTunes. And Monday will be back here with another episode of the BSN Network Podcast to recap the weekend and all the sports going on next week. So that will do it for the podcast here today. As always, I will see you all back here on the flip side. Enjoy the weekend. Got to say that first. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy all the sports. Enjoy the Mets. Enjoy the Yankees. 2 good series for two very good teams. So looking forward to see how the rest of those series play out. And that will do it. I will see you all back here on Monday. Hope you enjoyed it. And thanks for watching.